Our next guest is Laurie Dewan from Rdio. Laurie leads the Insights team at Rdio. Laurie has had a very long and established career in the analytics space. Previously, she has run analytics at Warner Brothers, Netflix, and she even ran her own analytics consultancy firm. Before we get into like the nitty-gritties of question, I would love if you can like tell everyone in the audience a little bit more about Rdio. What do you guys do? And I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar, but for the odd person who's not, what do you guys do and how you guys have grown over time? And in the recent past, what are some strategic bets you've made to expand the horizon of the company?
Sure, absolutely. Rdio is a streaming music service. How many people here have used Rdio? You can lie. No, don't lie. Great. So Rdio was launched in 2010, is when we actually rolled the product out. The company was founded by Jonas Friis, who co-founded Skype and brought some of his team in, and it's based here in San Francisco. But over the 5 years, we have expanded into 86 countries. We have offices all over the world. You mentioned 32 million songs. That's, I think, the average catalog size in the different countries. So very, very broad broad and deep experience in terms of the music variety. Additionally, our mission is to be available on every device and every platform in every way that people like to listen to music, so tuned to their interest. So in the time that I've been there, we have launched a free ad-supported version to supplement or to, in addition to our on-demand subscriber offering. And then recently, we also launched live radio broadcasts, simulcasts. So that's been probably one of the biggest changes that we've done recently. And the first time that we rolled out like a very new customer experience with Amplitude in place, kind of fully instrumented, and I think with kind of our new data systems right there to really capture that and allow us to react quickly to what we were seeing.
Right, absolutely. Like music streaming is like it's a brutally competitive space, and so in such a competitive market, how important is being able to make data informed decisions on the fly to actually stand out and in the end like drive bottom line growth? Like, can you like shed some light on that?
On the fly, that's a tall order.
Let's expand on the fly. Let's say like over a week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think being responsive is crucial in what we do, both again because of the depth of our catalog, the deep variety of experiences, the broad range of different perspectives that our users have. So I think one of the key roles of insights in the company, and specifically in data, is to allow someone to understand dramatically different experiences from the one that they might be having or might prefer. I consider myself I consider that to be my core role in Insights, is to try to sort of be like an empathy engine within the company and use data to really paint a clear and crisp picture of how those experiences differ. And that really allows someone sitting in San Francisco to understand what might be happening in India as we're launching a new platform or on a new device, and react quickly to what they're seeing, optimize that experience. Rdio is a company that is truly, deeply dedicated to listener experience and to our product. And so creating the best possible experience across this incredibly broad range of devices, language, music styles, social experiences. That's something that I think you cannot do without good data.
Right, absolutely. And I think you mentioned that you're in like 80 plus countries. Have you spent any time like analyzing like cultural nuances of how people interact with your platform in different countries, and like have you made any like product optimizations around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is something, I think there are probably many people here who do similar kinds of localization work. I think music is a fascinating area, and particularly music with a social layer over it, the way that Rdio is something that can be very personal. For example, I think something that, for me, has been very important has been in certain countries the social velocity on the site, the speed with which users will share their content, will discover new music through their friends, will come in through social channels is much, much more rapid. Right. And understanding what that is and what that looks like, there are other countries where that's just not the primary source of discovery. Right. And so, for example, I would say Brazil is a country where we have a lot of users coming in through social channels, and actually sort of, in many cases, Rdio is a social channel for them. They're there to check out each other's playlists, see what their friends are listening to. And that was something, and in some cases, not even play music. They're just there to connect. And that was something that required us to rethink that experience a little bit, because in other countries, while music can be social, it's not necessarily the primary channel for action, right? And so I think understanding what the expectations are in the different territories is very, very important to both positioning our messaging, our marketing, our partner strategy, and our content strategy.
Got it. And you lead an insights team. It's a fast-growing company. Is there a typical day in the life of Laurie, or is it is every day presents its own new challenge to you?
I would say that the days actually have a fairly similar shape. Primarily, as we actually started using Amplitude 18 months ago, and it was part of a fairly deep change in our analytics processes. And a lot of that was towards really distributing the data access to analytics. Also, instrumentation was broadened, I think, to a larger group. And as a result, I think I spend less time wondering what question I'm going to get asked today, and more time watching people answer questions with each other, and sort of stepping in when I think there's a better way, or maybe it requires more advanced tools. But I think we were talking before this, I started thinking about what is a typical day, and generally speaking, the Amplitude channels on Slack is one of the first ones that kind of fires up in the morning. People are slinging links at each other, trying to understand what's going on. So I'll often follow that. I try not to chime in unless I think there's a better way. Follow through to the resolution. Think about what new product initiatives we're going to be talking about that week, either in a project review or we do a biweekly business review. That's at this point, I would say, primarily coming from our Amplitude reports and analytics. So I may be, depending on where we are and preparing that, I may be thinking a little more broadly or a little more specifically. But truly, I think as we have democratized data across the company, my work has also become a little bit more big. I've been able to think a little more broadly.
And speaking on a similar theme that I touched with Jon before this was that I think one thing that I've observed over the last 6 months in our conversations is that how focused you are in actually instilling a culture of analytics. To teams that actually, in typical companies, you would not expect to be have anything to do with being data informed or making using analytics so heavily. Can you talk a little bit about why is that important, and how do you actually go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think we have adopted a strategy of decentralized data access and analytics at the company, and that's something that really has been enabled by working with Amplitude. We send all of our data through segments, which gives us a lot of flexibility. I think, and I want to be clear that, we have a data science team that's focusing on our recommendations engine and doing some very deep work, and they use a very different set of tools as well. This is around user behavior analytics and making sure that we have a common language across all parts of the company. I think some of the key things that really we did was, first of all, just really broaden education around our analytics. I looked back, I think we've done about 25 different training sessions for Amplitude in the last year and a half, and that was, including specifically setting up calls for every single one of our international territory groupings, strange hours, and just making sure that everyone there could listen in and that I could hear them ask their questions. Additionally, we have sort of analytics training spontaneously happening in different groups. One group that has really started getting into it lately is customer support, or community support. the help site's instrumented, and that's great, but they've really gotten deeper, I'd say, in the last couple of months about wanting to correlate that with other data sets, using what we have to go much deeper into user behavior, be more predictive, more proactive, and I think that's great. That's not something that I drove. They happen to sit next to one of our really, really smart data scientists, and maybe they're just inspired by his amazingly geeky questions that he always asks. But that's what I mean by distributed architecture. I don't know that I would be able to have said, my priority for Q3 is to have community support become more analytically driven. That was organic. So it was really about broadening that access. I don't know that that's for every company. I think we spend maybe more time than we need to discussing the how are we measuring this, what does this mean, how is this instrumented. Certainly if your goal is to move really, really fast and you can do it, having a tiny group of people with all the answers might help you do that, but I don't know that that's sustainable as you're growing. I'm pretty passionate about the idea of having this distributed analytics architecture.
And in terms of identifying, what to measure, so you have KPIs that you're measuring. From a company top-down level, are there things that you identify on an ongoing basis as key focus areas for a medium-term roadmap, not an immediate fix that needs to happen, but a medium-term roadmap that is an aspiration of a KPI that you want to improve upon, and how do you establish a process that this is the KPI I want to focus on, and this is how I'm going to set about improving that?
I don't know that we need to plan on picking new KPIs. I mean, our core KPIs are our core KPIs. Our core events are core. And by that, I mean that, I think I mentioned this to you. To me, having one or two key events that are diamond clear to everyone in the company, well understood. How do you instrument this? How do you measure this? What does this mean? What does this look like, in a car, on a phone, on someone's television, all over the world, everywhere, every experience. Keeping that as a cornerstone, and then focusing on, the basic core measurements of retention and activation, conversion. That is absolutely necessary in order to maintain a distributed analytics. So I think, we don't go through an evaluation process where we choose new metrics that we're going to consider important. Those are crucial. We have vigorous discussions about what we think, is driving our numbers. I think, again, as a company, we have been very lucky to be so product forward and so focused on creating an extraordinary user experience. So data interacts with what is beautiful, what is needed, what looks, what will work the best in every situation. And what I like seeing is in all of those specific instances, I see people layering other events over that, but it's absolutely crucial that whatever interactions they see there not be the core KPI. It's fantastic that you were able to get a bunch of people to do a certain specific thing. Does that lead us back to our core KPI? Does that improve core retention? One thing that we've been doing a lot lately, we started working with the growth discovery engine, which is awesome. And for those of you who don't use Amplitude, basically, this is just a tool that helps you very quickly identify correlations between specific events, event frequencies, and then whatever your desired outcome is. So once we have those correlations, I think what we spend a lot of time talking about is causality. How do we actually know that this is causal? It feels great to be able to make a change in a product and to drive a certain behavior. Does that behavior increase your core KPI? Do listeners come back more frequently in the specific bands of time that we consider to be most important? So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I do sort of feel that you can't be distributed across a lot of different KPIs. That's sort of you need a strong backbone to make sure that everyone is having a relevant conversation.
Right. Awesome. So to flip the question on the other side, that we have a core set of KPIs that we want to improve upon, retention and a couple more. working against them is a continual process. Like, do you set benchmark goals that in the next 3 months I want to get my retention from X% to Y%, so on and so forth, or is that not even like a goal target identified within the insights group?
Yeah, I mean, we have core KPI goals as a company for retention. Again, as we are launching major new initiatives, something like, rolling out live stations for the first time, we had in mind how we thought that would relate to our core metrics. Live is an example where we launched several months, a few months now, more than a few. And while there are fascinating insights about the specific ways that people stream the stations, how they find the stations, what they listen to, at its core, what we find is amazing retention on those stations, incredible return rates, amazing engagement, right? So being able to pull that back and speak about that experience right alongside the experience of a new user in a country where we don't have live broadcast, in a country where we have free ad-supported stations on mobile, how do those interact with each other? How do we allocate our resources across all of these different experiences? It's tying it back to the core. So yeah, no, we certainly, we always have goals for how we're going to improve our core metrics, and each of the different groups also specifically have, I think, their own goals for improving, user flows through a particular experience, for example. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask like similar question I asked Jon. So like if you have if you had to get one piece of advice, I mean you've spent like many years in the analytics space, to everyone in the audience, of something they should be focused around to grow their platforms. Like what would that advice be?
Yeah, this is actually something that I initially heard from the guys at Segment when we were rebuilding our analytics infrastructure. I mean, I really honestly do believe that clearly defining a core event is very, very important. And understanding why that it matters the most, being able to set benchmarks to get it. But most importantly, I think you can measure, I measure myself in the insights team by how well everyone in the organization understands that goal, how they can talk about what it means, why it's important, and how their work actually drives towards that goal. I think that that's so important for first of all, just motivating people, helping them really understand why did I do what I did today, right? That's part of a broad organizational goal. But also, I think it enables us to, it's a self-reinforcing action, because it means that as you're instrumenting new events, as you're adding complexity, as you're growing your business, you are still focused on that core metric.
The first question is essentially, I'd love to know about a feature that you recently launched that surprised you in some way, that you guys thought something was going to happen in one direction, something converse or inverse happened. And the follow-up is, how'd you guys get Taylor?
It was all me. I'll be honest. I put in a call. I was like, Tay, come on back. No, it's separate. I think I'm going to go back to the Rdio Live, because this was just such a new experience for us. And again, this was, we've made many product innovations. I've been at the company for 3 years, and in that time, again, we rolled out our free ad-supported experience. We've expanded into tons of new countries. But I think Live is such a very new experience for us. And for me, I think the surprise, again, was just how quickly we saw engagement building with the stations, returning user behavior, the frequency of favoriting stations and then extending to other content was really good. I think we may have jumped in a little too quickly trying to understand the content engagement. So like a sports station completely took off, and we were like, okay, sports, this is not what we thought people were going to be listening to on Rdio, right? And how does that actually interact? But with the music, why would you come to a music service to listen to sports? But actually, the overall experience is really strong for those stations. And what we saw was that the longer that we have Live available, and we launched this with a broadcast partner here in the US, so they were talking about it on the air, they're encouraging people to come in, the diversity of genres started to grow and grow. So now when you look at our top 10 Live stations, it's literally all over the map of the United States. It's also all over the map in terms of genres. And that has profound implications for our programming team, because, part of what makes the Rdio Live experience so exciting is it's live broadcast, but then kind of with an on-demand, deep catalog perspective. That's how we see everything. That's our lens, right? So being able to go, very deep if you hear an artist that you love. Again, thinking about how does someone listening to The Ticket on Rdio get deeper into other content? How do we talk to that person? Because we know that they're loving it and coming back all the time. That's not something that we expected. At least it's not something that I expected initially, and so I think it's sparked a lot of different conversations with our programming team about what other stations are we going to surface, how heavily do we surface those broadcast stations to people who maybe came in looking for something totally different, and I just have to, it's a product that I personally just really like, so I try not to let that cloud my judgment. Again, I try to focus on the numbers, but seeing that very high level of retention across a really broad range of music genres and other content as well has really challenged us to expect more, I would say.
My name is Prabhu. Me and my friends are working on a small travel app. What is the right time to start adding analytics? Is there any minimum user base that we should wait for? So being a startup, most of the time we'll be working on adding features, putting marketing on driving installations. Is there any minimum user base that we should wait for adding analytics?
Gosh, I believe that analytics needs to be part of the very early fabric of what you're doing. I can't imagine beginning to build out a platform, a tool, anything, without thinking first, what is important to me? How am I going to understand how people use my tool? I mean, even if you only have 5 users, they're going to surprise you, right? You will be wrong about how even that few users are interacting with your tool, and you have the great benefit of being able to ask them what they're doing, right? Because it's clearly very early days. So being able to have early and important conversations about how you're going to structure your analytics, test that right from the start, I think that is absolutely crucial. And again, maybe it's just, I guess anybody you ask is going to say their part must be there from the beginning. But I truly believe, although we talk about statistical significance, it's going to be hard to interpret a lot of deep insights from that. I guarantee you will be surprised how early you learn things about your product that you never thought. And I think it could have a profound impact on your roadmap to see those things early. I also just think that, from an investor perspective, knowing that you've already done that work and that you can speak in an educated way about your audience from the start, that would be kind of powerful.
I was wondering, how much content did you initially start with? And by content, I just mean songs. And did you aim towards a particular genre, or did you go across the board? And did you find that maybe focusing on a specific genre, maybe country, rap, whatever, was better, or kind of going across the board? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I joined the company in 2012. I believe our catalog size in the US was smaller than it is today, although we already had all of the majors and we were adding smaller labels. Right before I joined, we had made a big change, which is that we signed up with a CD Baby, right? So we have several kind of aggregators that have brought in a huge amount of independent content. I think again, I'm like feeling our content team standing right here being like, don't you know about that thing that happened in 2010? My take on just looking at the actual content that is popular is that there is no one genre that we absolutely push for. The platform itself is studiously neutral, right? So your experience will look very different very, very quickly. And that's something, again, the virtue of analytics, I absolutely love doing usertesting.com. We'll have people sign in and watch them, and what they see on their home screen shocks me. It looks nothing like what I would have imagined, right? You cannot even imagine what a 20-year-old Brazilian girl's homepage looks like, right? Or a 55-year-old Indian lady who's super into Bollywood soundtracks. They are totally different from what I like and what I listen to. And it's very, very hard for someone to remember that, right? It is very, very hard to step outside of your own experience. So I think a virtue of our platform is that we present content and it very quickly tunes into what you like. I will say, I think local content has been really important for us. So launching in 86 countries, I mean, you know, I'm not going to say we've got like the Curacao local catalog nailed down, but in most of our major territories, that's been a huge emphasis, is making sure that when we launch, we have relevant local content, you know, for that audience.
With such a large international audience, I really like that example you were mentioning with Brazil and the social sharing behavior being different. How do you think about zooming out or zooming in to all these different territories to start to understand some of these insights?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, our CEO, Anthony Bay, is, you know, very focused right from the start when he came in, you know, this multi-local idea, right? And it is immediately a paradox, right? So I think, and you know, we have one product team, we have local programming, you know, all over the world, but our high-level priorities need to come from San Francisco. So I do think that I think our primary focus is trying to find universal qualities in the user experience, and identify those core drivers, and that's probably what guides more of our decisions. But I can't speak for every, you know, I mean, we do many things with a very specific focus. And again, it's invaluable having empowered local teams who know their own data and can advocate from a place of knowing those numbers. I think that's really, really important if you're going to be multi-local, because it's not just about saying, I think that there might be something weird about this part, you know, this aspect of the experience, and maybe you don't realize this, but in my country, it's like, no, here are the numbers. You know what your global baselines are. Look at what it looks like in the UK. It's very different, right? So that, to me, was a kind of a core driver for the distributed analytics, was being able to empower every team to speak for themselves. That frees up the core teams to focus on bigger picture priorities and every type of segmentation, right? I do believe that there is a lot to be said for territory segmentations. I also believe that you know, users accessing Rdio, I don't know, in a car in different countries, there may be more similarities across that experience versus a user on an iOS device, for example. So it's important to, a territory is probably one of the easiest segmentations to do. I do find myself making pretty colorful charts that show all of our, you know, well, not all of our countries, that would be weird, but a lot of countries. It's not always the most relevant segmentation as well. So I think avoiding the temptation to just go straight to platform and country and look for broader trends is something that I can do, and making sure that all of my local teams know how to speak up from, again, a place of shared core KPIs, I think is also a good way to kind of navigate that.
So we got one more question here. We're going to wrap it up.
It's a very dynamic market. So like 1 year and a half, I started using like Deezer, using and pay for Deezer. And so like 3 months ago, I changed it for Spotify because the playlists are better. And so
Keep
like
going, man. Keep going.
like, did you study the players in the markets to grow? Or you are like, there's a big market, you know, like there's a lot of people who's not start to using or even paying. Like, by the way, I'm from Brazil, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. And so like, you study the other players or still like looking for growth first?
Yeah, I mean,
growing more, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the music business is fascinating, exciting, and digital streaming and streaming music, and as you say, you know, the paid market. There's just the massive growth to come. You know, the ability to influence the direction of that growth through outstanding user experience, I think, is part of what motivates me to keep coming back and makes me so excited to be at Rdio. I don't really see it as a zero sum at all. I think that the growth potential is really profound. So that's kind of a very, very broad statement. But yeah, if I thought that the music business was done growing, I would not be as excited to be doing what I do every day.
All right. Before we wrap it up, Laurie, what's your favorite jam these days?
Oh.
Is it Hotline Bling?
boy. You know, I am just so fascinated by Christine and the Queens. I love their album, or her. Is it a her or a they? I never know if the Queens are a real thing. Anyway, Christine and the Queens, I actually just had to pick my #1 song for 2015 for our staff picks, which is always like a very intense day for me. And I have to go with the Tame Impala record. I just cannot stop. I love it so much. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time, Laurie. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.